Welcome to DWBIADDA channel. Please subscribe for latest training videos.
In today's video, we will be learning the concepts of Docker volumes. So first of all, what is the need to manage data in Docker? So by default, all the files are created inside a container are stored on a writable container layer. So talking about Docker, there is a container layer present inside the Docker environment, and whenever we are creating some file inside the container, these all are stored in that container layer. So the data doesn't persist when that container no longer exists, and it can be difficult to get the data out of the container if other process needs it. So it is totally dependent on the container about the data which is stored inside the container. Once the container is not present, the data will also be gone. So the container's writable layer is tightly coupled to the host machine. So it basically means that the container's writable layers, or the layer on which the data is stored, is totally dependent on the host machine on which it is running. So it is not easy to move data out of that layer. And also, to write inside that layer, we need a storage driver to manage that. So these are the main reasons why the concept of volumes in Docker was introduced. So volumes are the preferred mechanism for persisting data generated and used by Docker containers. So whenever some data is generated or some file is created or stored in Docker, we generally prefer to use Docker volumes for that, because they have many advantages, like some of them listed here. So volumes are easier to backup or migrate. So once we have created a Docker volume, we can easily backup the volume, or we can also migrate the volume into a different environment for a different container. Now the second is that we can manage the volumes using the Docker CLI commands or Docker API. So it is pretty easy to manage those volumes using simple commands, and also we can use the Docker API for that. And the volumes also work on both Linux and Windows containers. So it is a major advantage of using the volumes for storing the data, because it doesn't matter whether we store the data or we create the file on Linux environment or Windows environment, it will be working fine on both of them. Also, the volumes can be more safely shared among multiple containers. So volumes are not something which can be accessed by everyone. We can create the volumes according to our needs and secure them so that they are shared safely among the multiple containers. And it also lets us store volume on remote hosts or cloud provider. So if we want to use the volume and want to store them on the cloud resources, we can also use that. And we can also use the method of encryption for the content of volume in order to secure the content present inside our containers. So the new volume can have their content pre-populated by a container. So whenever we are creating a new volume, we can also have a pre-populated content which was created by the container before we mounted the volume on the container. So these are some basic advantages of using the volumes, and these overcome these difficulties which were faced earlier before the concept of volumes was introduced. Now this is the basic infrastructure of how it all works. So here we have our host environment, and here we have our container. So what we are doing here is that we are giving it a volume. So it is taking a volume which is called Docker area or file system. So all the files are stored here, and it is in continuous interaction with the container, and we have also bind a mount with this file system. So whenever some data is stored here, it will interact with the container and it will get stored in the memory. So there are some more features of volumes. So what we can do using a volume is that we can start a container with the volume. So let us say if you want to start a container and directly attach the volume to it, we can do that. Also, we can start a service with volumes. So let us say if we are using a particular service inside a container and we want a volume attached with it so that the data generated with that service is stored in the volume, we can also do that. Now we can also populate a volume using a container. So if we have a volume and we want multiple containers attached to that volume, we can also do that. Now if you want a read-only volume and we want to use it for our Docker containers, we can also do that so that no third party is able to write on that volume. It is only in a readable mode. Now, if you want to share data among machines, the volume is the best way to do that in a secure and safe manner. Now, backup, restore, and migrate data volumes, we have already discussed that these are the major three features which are provided by the volumes. Here we have another infrastructure of volume in a bit complex way, so we will try to understand it. So here we have an underlying storage platform. So this is the storage platform where our data is being stored. Now here we have a control plane and data plane. Data plane is attached to the virtual volume. So if we are having a container at the top and it is interacting with the file system and it is fetching the files, then the file system, what will it will do is that if we have created a virtual volume, then it will fetch the data from the virtual volume and pass it to the container runtime. And this process is done by either Docker Swarm or Kubernetes. And the other way is that the container runtime is simply using the volume plugin, which is also a good feature provided by volume, and interacting with control pane to fetch the data. And here from the data plane, the virtual volume is also fetching the data. And this process is called storage API. So it is consisting of two processes, orchestration and storage API, and these two processes makes up the basic functionality of a Docker volume. So in today's video, we learned that how the Docker volume works and what are the basic features of Docker volume. So friends, that was all for today's video. Thank you.